Brace yourselves for the high-stakes face-off at Metropolitan Hope Hospital, where a ruthless biker gang called the Iron Vultures clashes with a devoted nurse and her ex-Special Forces brother. In this intense story, you'll witness nail-biting showdowns, secret deals, and courageous stands against seemingly unstoppable villains. Every corner of the hospital becomes a battleground, and each decision could mean life or death. Think you know who comes out on top? You'll have to listen to the full story to discover the jaw-dropping finale. If you enjoy heart-pounding action mixed with real human emotion, this tale is for you. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any updates. Your support helps us bring more powerful, inspiring stories straight to you. Trust us, you won't want to miss a second of this epic showdown. Anna Wilson had never imagined that her compassion for patients would one day place her directly in the crosshairs of a ruthless motorcycle gang. All her life, she had been the type of person who believed in second chances and the healing power of empathy. She was the kind of nurse who'd work an extra shift without complaint if someone else needed to attend a family emergency. In her years at Metropolitan Hope Hospital, located in a busy pocket of Riverside City, she thought she had seen it all: knife wounds, car crash injuries, victims of random assaults. Yet nothing had prepared her for the day she would walk out into the hospital parking lot and find her beloved sedan completely destroyed by the Iron Vultures MC. That fateful night, Anna had been working a grueling double shift in the trauma ward. She spent hours tending to an elderly patient who had arrived with bruises and cracked ribs. Though the patient insisted it was just a random fall, Anna's trained eye noticed the pattern of the bruising looked more like he had been kicked or punched. Her gut told her that the Iron Vultures could be involved. She had heard hushed conversations among the medical staff that this fearsome group had been expanding their territory in Riverside, often leaving small businesses and ordinary citizens battered or terrified. Still, Anna tried to push these thoughts from her mind. She was committed to treating the patient before her, meticulously recording each injury in the medical files. As the clock crept past midnight, she finally wrapped up her shift. Exhausted but determined to keep her spirits high, Anna stepped out through the automated sliding doors of Metropolitan Hope. The parking lot was bathed in the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, casting long shadows that made the corners seem even darker. She spotted the empty space where her small silver sedan should have been and froze. At first, she thought she must have forgotten where she parked. Then, from the far corner, she heard the menacing rumble of motorcycles. Her heart thudded as she walked closer. 5 bikers, all sporting black leather vests emblazoned with the emblem of a vulture with outstretched wings, were hovering around something on the ground. Their laughter, coarse and mocking, cut through the stillness of the night. When Anna finally saw what they were looking at, her stomach twisted. It was her car, tires slashed, windows shattered, hood dented in multiple places. One biker stomped the windshield with his heavy boot, cracking it further, while another revved his engine as though preparing for a grand exit. Without thinking, Anna called out, "Hey, stop!" Her voice trembled as she tried to project authority she did not fully feel. The largest of the bikers, his vest patch labeling him an officer of the Iron Vultures, turned and sneered. He tossed a crowbar in his hands casually, stepping forward until he was only a few feet from her. "Bad parking choice, nurse," he growled, his breath reeking of stale cigarettes. Anna's mind raced. She was alone in a dimly lit parking lot with men who clearly had no qualms about violence. Her instincts told her to run, but something in her refused to back down. Before she could speak again, a cold, mocking laugh cut her off. The officer swung the crowbar once more at her car's broken headlights, sending shards of glass flying. Then just as quickly, he turned to Anna, a smug grin twisting his features. "Next time, mind your own business," he said. The bikes roared away, leaving Anna trembling in the wake of their destruction. She felt tears prick her eyes, anger and fear swirling in her chest. Yet as she stood there, staring at the ruin of her sedan, she remembered one crucial fact the bikers couldn't have known. Anna Wilson wasn't the only one they had targeted. She had a brother, Brandon Wilson, whose background was far more dangerous than any motorcycle gang. And by harming her, the Iron Vultures had just woken a sleeping giant. In the aftermath of the parking lot attack, Anna Wilson reported the incident to hospital security and then spent most of the night oscillating between exhaustion and anxiety. Sleep came in fleeting intervals, disturbed by nightmares of crowbars clanging against metal. By the time she returned to Metropolitan Hope Hospital the following day, her eyes were underscored by dark circles, and her nerves felt as though they were stretched to the breaking point. Yet she pressed on. Nursing was not just her career, it was her calling. She arrived for her shift to find a small knot of worried coworkers whispering in the hallway. They were discussing yet another patient admitted with bruises and lacerations that made no logical sense for a simple slip. Anna overheard the name Iron Vultures pass from one anxious intern's lips to another. A second later, Dr. Alina Cross, the head of the trauma ward, appeared. Tall and formidable, Dr. Cross had a reputation for never losing her cool. But even she looked particularly tense this morning. "Anna," she called, beckoning her over. "We need you in Bay 2, another suspicious case." Anna followed Dr. Cross into the trauma bay, where a man in his 40s lay on a gurney, his face swollen and his arms peppered with cuts. He mumbled an incoherent story about losing control of his bicycle on a curb, yet the pattern of his abrasions and contusions didn't match that explanation at all. As Anna gently examined the man's bruised ribs, she felt a flicker of anger that such brutality could happen and possibly be repeated if no one intervened. While Dr. Cross walked away to schedule a scan, Anna carefully charted each injury in the patient's file. She documented the types of bruises, their approximate ages, and the nature of the cuts. In the back of her mind, she still couldn't shake the image of her ruined sedan and the mocking laughter of the bikers from the night before. The parallels between her car's destruction and these suspicious injuries were too glaring to ignore. Random acts of intimidation, delivered with precise cruelty, designed to coerce or terrorize. As Anna finished updating the file, Dr. Cross returned, her gaze heavy with concern. "Anna, I've never seen so many suspicious injuries in such a short span," she said softly. "I'm worried. There are rumors that the Iron Vultures are stepping up their activities. Extortion, intimidation, you name it. If they're threatening our patients, we have a serious problem." Anna nodded, lips pressing into a tight line. "It's not just the patients," she admitted, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to remain composed. "They wrecked my car last night. I'm pretty sure it was them." Shock and anger mingled on Dr. Cross's face. "Are you all right?" she asked, lowering her tone. When Anna gave a small nod, Dr. Cross sighed. "We have to be very meticulous now, both in how we document injuries and how we protect ourselves. But we need more than just hospital security. We need the police or someone who won't back down from these criminals." Anna's pulse quickened at the mention of seeking outside help. She flashed back to the phone call she made immediately after the attack, her trembling fingers dialing a number she seldom used. Brandon Wilson had picked up on the second ring. Although they had drifted apart over the years, Brandon's voice carried an undercurrent of controlled ferocity when she recounted her ordeal. He promised to come. He didn't offer comforting platitudes. He just promised action. The conversation with Dr. Cross ended when an urgent overhead page demanded the doctor's presence in another ward. Anna inhaled deeply, mentally preparing herself. She had never wanted to be in the center of any conflict, but fate had other plans. If the Iron Vultures thought they could strong-arm her or her patients into silence, they would soon learn just how stubborn and resourceful she could be, especially with Brandon in her corner. Later that same day, Anna's fatigue weighed heavily on her, yet she refused to leave the hospital until she had finished filling out all her paperwork. With the Iron Vulture's presence looming like a thundercloud over Metropolitan Hope, she sensed that every detail, every piece of documentation could become crucial evidence. The more meticulous she was, the harder it would be for anyone to manipulate the system, but the tension in the hospital corridors was palpable. Nurses whispered about strange men in leather vests lurking near the medication storage. Orderlies nervously avoided corners where they had previously spotted boots and scuffed motorcycle helmets. Even some of the doctors, a typically confident bunch, seemed to move with heightened caution, glancing over their shoulders as if expecting trouble at any moment. In the staff break room, someone had pinned a local newspaper clipping about a recent spate of vandalism attributed to the Iron Vultures. Red marker circles highlighted details that matched Anna's ordeal. Amid this gloom, Dr. Alina Cross took Anna aside, her face etched with concern. "I'm worried about your safety," she admitted, looking straight into Anna's eyes. "Hospital security can only do so much. We don't have the manpower or the authority to confront these bikers directly." Anna swallowed hard, her thoughts flying to Brandon. I called someone, my brother. He's ex-Special Forces. He said he'd help." Dr. Cross blinked, then nodded, relief flickering across her features. "That might be exactly what we need," she replied. "We have to stand up for ourselves, but we also have to be strategic. If your brother has a background in dealing with threats like this, maybe he'll see angles we're missing." A moment later, the overhead speaker announced a code blue in one of the operating rooms. Dr. Cross dashed away, leaving Anna alone in the hallway, her heart pounding, not just from the hospital emergency, but from the knowledge that real help, her brother, was on the way. When she finally stepped outside, ready to head home, she discovered two men leaning against the wall near the exit, wearing Iron Vultures vests. Her pulse quickened. One of them glanced up from his phone, meeting her gaze with a look of smug recognition. Anna's hands tightened around her tote bag. She walked briskly, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Hey, nurse!" one of them called out, his voice echoing in the near-empty walkway. She pretended not to hear, her footsteps quickening. He laughed, a sinister sound that cut into her nerves. "We hear you're good at patching people up. Might need you soon." Anna's stomach churned, but she didn't stop. She slipped through the glass doors and out onto the sidewalk, grateful to see a few pedestrians in the distance. The intimidation was blatant. They wanted her to know they could watch her, corner her, or worse. Yet she reminded herself that Brandon was coming, that she wasn't as alone as they might think. When she finally got on the bus, her hands trembled slightly, and she exhaled in relief as the doors slid shut behind her. She stared at her reflection in the window, noticing the worry etched across her features. In that moment, she made a silent vow. She would fight not just for herself, but for her patients and coworkers who were being terrorized. A surge of quiet determination stirred in her chest. If the Iron Vultures thought they could break her spirit, they had underestimated the strength born from a lifetime of caring for others, and the fierce loyalty of a brother who had faced far worse threats than a motorcycle gang could ever imagine. 2 nights later, Brandon Wilson stood in front of Metropolitan Hope Hospital's main entrance, his posture straight and his eyes scanning every corner with measured intensity. He had arrived in Riverside just before dawn, driving through the night, fueled by a simmering anger at what had happened to his sister. Though the siblings had been somewhat estranged, their bond was far from broken, especially when danger loomed. A tall man with close-cropped hair, Brandon exuded the calm, watchful aura of someone well-trained in high-stakes operations. He carried a simple duffel bag, but inside it he had carefully packed a range of gear gleaned from years in special forces, tools for surveillance, self-defense, and discreet communication. He was used to volatile environments, having been deployed in conflict zones across the globe. While Riverside's situation wasn't an official military operation, the threat was still real and deeply personal. Stepping inside, he found Anna finishing up her shift at the nurse's station. The moment she caught sight of him, the tension in her expression softened. Despite her relief, shadows of worry lingered in her eyes. She slipped away from her co-workers, leading Brandon to a small, out-of-the-way lounge where they could speak in private. "What have you found out?" he asked quietly. Anna recounted the events of the past week, the mysterious injuries that showed telltale signs of a connection to the Iron Vultures, the intimidation that took place right within hospital corridors, and her own terrifying encounter with the bikers who had destroyed her car. Brandon listened intently, his jaw tightening with each new detail. "They're using fear," Anna concluded, her voice quavering just a bit. "I see how the staff reacts whenever they walk in wearing those vests. They don't even need to say much. Everyone knows they're dangerous." Brandon nodded, a steely resolve settling on his features. Fear is a powerful weapon, but it can be countered with the right strategy. "Let me take a look around. I'll start mapping out the hospital's layout. checking for vulnerabilities and vantage points. Anna looked both relieved and anxious. Just be careful. They're everywhere, she warned. Brandon offered a rare, reassuring smile. I will, he promised, then asked, what about security cameras? Are they in the right places? Where do the bikers hang out the most? Over the next hour, Anna and Brandon huddled, discussing every detail she could recall. How certain Iron Vultures preferred the ER entrance while others seemed more drawn to administrative offices. She mentioned that some staff members, particularly those new on the job, seemed more vulnerable to bullying, while more seasoned employees found quiet ways to resist. Brandon mentally cataloged all of this, formulating a plan of approach. Before they parted, Anna squeezed her brother's hand. Thank you, she whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of gratitude and lingering apprehension. I know we drifted apart, but I'm glad you're here. Brandon's gaze softened. Family is family, he said simply. I won't let them hurt you again. In that silent promise, there was an undercurrent of the lethal skills Brandon had honed in distant battlefields. The Iron Vultures might think they owned Riverside with their brazen shows of force, but Brandon Wilson was prepared to counter them with a methodical precision that came from years of special ops experience. He'd seen true warlords and mercenaries crumble under targeted action and unwavering resolve. A motorcycle gang with inflated egos would hardly be his greatest challenge. The following day dawned gray and humid, the kind of weather that pressed on the city like a heavy blanket. Anna arrived at the hospital early, her thoughts swirling with half-formed worries and cautious optimism. She found herself glancing over her shoulder more often than usual, searching for any sign of Brandon. Though it comforted her to know he was somewhere in the building, it also underscored how dangerous the situation truly was. Not long into her shift, a commotion in the parking lot drew her attention. 3 Iron Vultures bikers came roaring up on their motorcycles, congregating near the very spot where Anna's car had been vandalized. Her pulse quickened as she observed them through a window in the hospital corridor. Even at a distance, she could sense the hostility radiating from their leather-clad figures. One of them dismounted and began pacing, phone pressed to his ear, while the others scanned the area as though staking out territory. A few minutes later, Anna heard raised voices from the entrance lobby. Bracing herself, she hurried downstairs. There, she spotted a confrontation between 2 of the bikers and one of the hospital security guards. The guard, an older, heavy-set man who typically greeted staff with a jovial grin, now wore an expression of thinly veiled anxiety, his hand resting on the baton at his hip. I'm sorry, but you can't just barge in and start harassing people, he was saying. One of the bikers, a man with a scar running across his cheek, sneered. We're here to check on a friend, old man. Move aside. Before the situation escalated, Anna stepped in, her voice firm. We have rules about visitor access, sir. If you can give me the patient's name, I can verify if you're allowed to see him. The scarred biker turned his intense stare on her, recognition igniting in his eyes. Ah, the nurse with the messed-up car, he taunted. Surprised you're still working here. Figured you'd be too scared to show up. Anna swallowed the knot in her throat. I'm just doing my job, she managed evenly. Who is it you're looking for? He chuckled, ignoring her question. Brave words, but we all know your place in this. Don't push your luck, nurse. Tension crackled in the air, thick enough to taste. Before Anna could respond, Brandon strode in from a side corridor, placing himself discreetly between the bikers and the security guard. Though he wore a casual button-down shirt and jeans, there was something about his stance, steady, coiled, that commanded attention. Is there a problem? He asked mildly, his voice quiet, but carrying the resonance of someone who wouldn't hesitate to act. The scarred biker sized Brandon up, an uneasy glint in his eyes. Who the hell are you? Just someone who doesn't like bullies, Brandon replied, meeting the biker's stare unflinchingly. Anna's heart hammered as she watched the 2 men lock eyes. She sensed that the tension could erupt into violence at any moment. Her gaze flicked to the security guard, who hovered uncertainly, batons still in hand. For a moment it seemed the biker might challenge Brandon physically, but something in Brandon's calm demeanor gave the man pause. Snorting in frustration, The biker finally jerked his head at his companion, and they stalked off toward the elevator bay, leaving behind only a muttered threat about coming back later. A hush fell over the lobby as they disappeared. Anna let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Brandon turned to the security guard with a nod of thanks, then stepped over to Anna. "You all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, shoulders still tense. "That could have gone worse." He gave her a reassuring look. "They're just testing the waters. Next time they might not back down so easily." Anna bit her lip. She knew he was right. She also knew that, for all the aggression the Iron Vultures were showing now, they still hadn't come face to face with Brandon's full capabilities. There was a storm brewing, one that the bikers clearly intended to steer, but they had no idea that hidden behind Anna's calm blue scrubs was an unbreakable spirit, and lurking in the periphery was an ex-Special Forces soldier determined to protect his sister at any cost. By the weekend, Brandon's discreet investigation had begun to yield unsettling information. In the course of quietly patrolling the hospital halls, he identified several staff members who appeared either unnerved or complicit in the Iron Vulture's activities. A few employees seemed terrified and unwilling to speak, while others acted suspiciously evasive, as though they were guarding secrets. Brandon's instincts told him that the gang's influence ran deeper than mere intimidation. It likely involved bribery or blackmail at multiple levels. One afternoon, he found himself in a deserted corridor near the hospital's administrative offices. The overhead fluorescents hummed, casting harsh light on the white linoleum. Brandon paused when he heard low voices around the corner. Pressing himself against the wall, he leaned in to catch fragments of a conversation. "We can't keep covering for them," hissed a voice that sounded anxious. "Someone's going to notice these discrepancies in the medication logs." A second voice, calmer but menacing, replied, "Nightmare has everything under control. As long as we do what we're told, the money keeps flowing, and we all stay safe." Brandon's eyes narrowed. Nightmare. He recognized the name from Anna's overheard conversations among staff. According to rumors, Nightmare was the mastermind who had transformed the Iron Vultures from a local biker clique into a more organized syndicate. This conversation confirmed that some administrative staff were complicit, accepting payouts in exchange for altering medical records or looking the other way when hospital supplies went missing. He stepped back quietly, not wanting to be discovered. This wasn't the time to confront them directly. Instead, he needed to collect hard evidence. Names, dates, potential leads that could be turned over to trustworthy law enforcement, possibly even federal agents if the local police were compromised. Though he had no official badge, Brandon understood the importance of building a solid case. In his Special Forces days, gathering intel was often more critical than launching an immediate assault. That evening, he met up with Anna in a quiet corner of the hospital cafeteria, which had mostly cleared out by then. She looked worn down, sipping a cup of coffee with trembling hands. Still, her eyes lit up when she saw him approach. "Anything new?" she asked softly. Brandon nodded, seating himself across from her. He lowered his voice. "They have admin staff in their pocket. They're manipulating the hospital's inventory, prescription records, maybe even insurance claims. Someone called Nightmare is pulling the strings." Anna inhaled sharply. "Nightmare? I've heard that name. He's supposed to be the brains behind the Iron Vulture's expansion. Some say he's ex-law enforcement, others say ex-military. No one knows for sure." A troubled silence followed. Anna stared at her coffee, processing the realization that her once safe workplace had been infiltrated by a criminal network with a sophisticated plan. Brandon placed a reassuring hand over hers. "We'll stop them," he promised, his tone resolute. "But I need you to help me gather as much evidence as possible. Document every suspicious case, every odd request, or missing supply. Any pattern could be our key." Anna nodded, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been compiling notes on patient injuries that don't line up with their official stories. Some of the records seem to vanish from the digital system, so I started making paper copies and storing them in a locker. I'm scared, Brandon, but I know we have to do this." He squeezed her hand gently. "Keep that fear. It'll keep you alert. But don't let it paralyze you. We're fighting to protect everyone here, including you. The Iron Vultures think they own this hospital now, but they've never faced a real, coordinated pushback. We'll show them what that looks like. As they parted ways, Anna felt an odd combination of dread and hope. Every day the Iron Vultures' grip seemed tighter, their presence more visible, their influence more insidious. Yet for the first time since her car was destroyed, she felt a spark of optimism. With Brandon on her side and the hospital staff gradually uniting in a shared sense of outrage, perhaps the Iron Vultures had finally met their match. In the following week, the Iron Vulture's internal power dynamics began to show cracks for anyone paying close attention. While some bikers adhered loyally to Nightmare's strategic vision, cleaner and more corporate in approach, others gravitated toward a second figure known as Tempest, who favored raw intimidation and brute force. Whispers in the hospital corridors hinted that a rift was forming in the gang's leadership, as Tempest and his followers resented what they saw as Nightmare's soft-handed tactics. Anna noticed that certain bikers who strolled in, wearing suits over their vests, seemed more professional. They'd appear in administrative offices, sometimes accompanied by hospital staff who kept their eyes lowered. Meanwhile, another subset of bikers swaggered around as though they owned every hallway, forcibly demanding changes to patient records or medication allocations. The tension between these two groups manifested in heated arguments, sometimes occurring right outside the ER, prompting security to stand by helplessly. Late one night, Anna hurried out of the hospital to grab a breath of fresh air during her break. She found Brandon leaning against a low concrete wall in the courtyard, scanning his phone for updates. Under the dim glow of a single floodlight, she could see the worry lines etched across his forehead. "You look tired," she remarked softly. He nodded, slipping the phone into his pocket. "I've been collecting intel, looking up every name I can gather from whispered conversations. This Tempest guy is more volatile than I expected. He's pushing for direct threats against the staff. Nightmare apparently wants to keep everything under wraps. That conflict might be our best shot at driving a wedge between them." Anna shuddered at the thought of more violence. "So they'll turn on each other, and we just watch them tear themselves apart? That's risky too. People here could get hurt in the crossfire." Brandon's gaze hardened. "I know. We can't just hope they self-destruct. We need to protect the hospital, especially the more vulnerable staff and patients. If we time things right, we might get enough evidence to tip the scales with law enforcement. Once the Iron Vultures start fighting among themselves, they'll be too distracted to guard every angle." As if on cue, they heard the distinct roar of several motorcycles reverberating through the night. Anna's stomach tightened, remembering the screech of metal and broken glass when her sedan had been trashed. A minute later, a security guard rushed out to the courtyard, breathless. "Miss Wilson, your brother—" He paused, catching his breath. "There's trouble inside. Tempest and some of his guys just showed up in the main lobby. They're demanding to speak to the board members." Anna and Brandon exchanged a tense look before sprinting back into the hospital, weaving through corridors to reach the lobby. There they found a cluster of 5 Iron Vultures in full regalia, their boots echoing on the tiled floor. Tempest stood at the center, a tall man with a shaved head and piercing eyes. He pointed a gloved finger at a trembling administrator, spitting out threats about compliance or consequences. When Anna moved closer, Tempest's eyes flicked to her. A predatory smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Well, if it isn't the nurse who can't mind her own business," he said, voice dripping with contempt. Brandon positioned himself protectively beside Anna, his posture taut. Though he said nothing, his presence alone spoke volumes. Tempest eyed him curiously. "You again," he snorted. "So you're the tough guy?" Tension escalated, an electric charge filling the air. The hospital security stood a few yards away, clearly outmatched by the gang's aggression. Just then, a shrill voice echoed through the atrium. Lisa Serrano, one of the hospital board members, stepped forward. She was shaking visibly, but tried to sound authoritative. "Please, we can discuss this privately. There's no need for threats." Tempest smirked, but he allowed himself to be led away, his men trailing behind. As they disappeared down a corridor, Anna exhaled shakily. "That was too close," she whispered, her eyes darting to Brandon. He nodded, lips set in a grim line. "They're not backing down, and if the board caves, they'll only tighten their grip. We need to act soon." A silent accord passed between them. The hospital was on the verge of becoming a full-blown battleground, with staff, patients, and city officials potentially caught in the crossfire. But Anna and Brandon refused to let the Iron Vultures turn their place of healing into a stage for violent power plays. The tension inside Metropolitan Hope Hospital intensified day by day. Though the Iron Vultures had not unleashed outright chaos just yet, the mere presence of armed, leather-clad bikers lurking in waiting rooms or pacing near supply closets filled the corridors with dread. By this point, many patients and staff knew the gang by sight. A hush would fall whenever a group of bikers walked by, as though the entire hospital collectively held its breath. Amid this climate of fear, Anna Wilson and Brandon Wilson grew more determined and more strategic. Anna made meticulous notes on each patient that came in with suspicious injuries, taking care to keep hard copies in a locked cabinet away from the hospital's compromised digital systems. She also encouraged her fellow nurses to do the same, explaining quietly that the Iron Vultures might attempt to alter or erase electronic data. Some staff members resisted at first, too terrified to cross the gang's path. Others saw no choice but to comply, wanting to protect themselves and their patients. Brandon, meanwhile, had begun forging alliances with a handful of hospital security staff who were fed up with feeling powerless. Under the guise of casual conversations, he assessed their willingness to discreetly report suspicious activity. He was careful not to reveal too much about his own background, but the seriousness in his demeanor conveyed that he was more than just an overprotective brother. Slowly, a small network formed, people who were willing to communicate unusual movements or mention if a certain area seemed to be under heavier biker surveillance than usual. One afternoon, Brandon received a phone call from a contact he had reached out to in federal law enforcement. The contact confirmed that the Iron Vultures were on the radar for suspected narcotics distribution and insurance fraud across state lines. However, the feds needed incontrovertible proof, particularly documentation that could link the bikers' activities directly to the hospital's records. Brandon's eyes blazed with purpose as he ended the call. Now more than ever, gathering solid evidence was essential. As part of this effort, Anna and Brandon met in a cramped supply closet off a rarely used hallway to compare notes. Anna flipped through copies of medical charts, each detailing unexplained fractures or bruises that formed suspicious patterns. "Look at this one," she whispered, pointing to a file. "Patient claimed he fell off a ladder, but the bruises are all around his torso, like he was kicked, and the police report was never filed." Brandon studied the pages intently, committing details to memory. "I have a contact in the local police force too, Officer Adams. He's not corrupt, but he's low on the totem pole. If we can get him these files, he might push them up the chain. But we have to be careful not to tip off the vultures." Anna nodded in the solemn agreement, her heart hammering. "They're always watching. Even now I feel like they could burst in at any moment." Brandon's expression hardened, his own tension evident. "We just need more time," he reassured her. "Time to collect enough evidence. Time for the feds to line up their operation." But with every day that passes, Tempest and Nightmare edge closer to an all-out confrontation. "We have to be ready." They slipped out of the supply closet, returning to their respective duties. Anna dove back into patient care, applying her gentle touch and comforting words to those who needed it. Yet she couldn't shake the unsettling sense that the hospital was perched on a precipice, one step away from plunging into open violence. For all her nursing expertise, Anna found herself steeling her nerves for a battle she hoped would never come, but one she feared was inevitable. As the hospital's tension approached a boiling point, even those on the periphery began to notice the changes. Reporters parked themselves outside, trying to glean information about rumors of gang infiltration. Concerned family members phoned in, worried that their loved ones might be at risk. In response, some of the hospital board members, those who were still untainted by corruption, took steps to tighten security protocols, ensuring extra guards at every entrance and restricting visitor access after certain hours. Of course, these measures did little to deter the Iron Vultures. Many bikers sauntered in, scowling at staff who dared to question them. Lisa Serrano, the board member who had previously suggested appeasement, now looked as though she deeply regretted ever speaking to Tempest or his men. On more than one occasion, Anna caught sight of Lisa hurrying away from ominous-looking men in suits who clearly represented Nightmare's corporate side. Meanwhile, Anna juggled her usual nursing duties with her covert mission alongside Brandon. The stress wore on her, manifesting in sleepless nights and an uneasy knot in her stomach that never fully subsided. Yet her resolve never wavered. Every time she glimpsed a fearful patient or witnessed a coworker trembling as a biker strode by, Anna's conviction only grew stronger. Someone had to take a stand. Then came the night that changed everything. Late into her shift, Anna was in the middle of prepping medication for a patient when she heard a volley of raised voices echoing from the hallway near the ICU. She rushed to investigate, feeling the pulse in her neck quicken. When she arrived at the scene, she discovered a cluster of iron vultures confronting each other. Tempest at the forefront of one group, Nightmare at the helm of the other. Nurses and doctors stood back terrified. Anna pressed herself against the wall, trying to remain inconspicuous while gleaning what was happening. Tempest's face was contorted with rage as he snarled at Nightmare, accusing him of jeopardizing their operation by involving too many paper pushers. Nightmare, for his part, wore a tight-lipped smirk and responded with icy contempt, insisting that the only way to maintain control of the hospital was by keeping it looking legitimate. "You're drawing unnecessary attention with your thuggery," Nightmare spat. The two men's voices rose to a fever pitch, echoing down the corridor. Tension crackled in the air like a live wire. Anna could sense that if either of them made a move, just one step too far, blood would be shed right here in the hospital. She tensed, knowing that Brandon would soon intervene if things escalated. Sure enough, Brandon appeared moments later, carefully positioning himself at the edge of the standoff. She saw his gaze flick to her in quick concern, then return to the bikers. He didn't wade into their argument, likely gauging the danger level and waiting to see if the confrontation would break out in violence. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the tension, the clatter of a gurney being rolled at high speed down the hallway. A nurse shouted for help, explaining that a critical patient needed immediate transport to surgery. The bikers parted just enough to let the gurney pass, the patient's groans adding a grim reminder of what this place was supposed to be, an institution of healing, not a battleground. As the gurney disappeared around the corner, Nightmare shot Tempest a final glare. "We'll settle this later," he growled, before signaling for his men to follow him down a side corridor. Tempest, jaw clenched, spat onto the floor, then turned away with a dismissive snarl. A shaky breath escaped Anna's lungs. The confrontation had ended without violence, but she sensed that this was merely a preview of the storm to come. Brandon caught her eye and gave a small, steadying nod. They both knew time was running out. Their next move had to be precise, or the entire hospital could descend into chaos, and innocent lives would hang in the balance. The following morning, Anna Wilson awoke to an unsettling sense of anticipation. She had tossed and turned all night, replaying the tense standoff between Nightmare and Tempest in her mind. Her dreams were plagued by images of the hospital corridors filling with chaos, bikers shouting, patients cowering, and the staff she cared about caught in the middle. By the time she arrived at Metropolitan Hope Hospital for her early shift, her nerves felt like they were stretched too thin, yet she knew she had to appear calm, if only to keep her coworkers steady amid the growing turmoil. The tension was palpable as soon as she walked through the lobby doors. A group of Iron Vultures bikers loitered near the main reception area, their jackets emblazoned with the Vulture insignia. More unnervingly, some wore collared shirts over their leather vests, as though trying to appear respectable, but their hardened gazes gave them away. A couple of them cast Anna a knowing look as she passed. She refused to meet their eyes, heading straight for the nurses' station, where she found Dr. Alina Cross already conferring with two residents. "We've got more suspicious admissions, Anna," Dr. Cross said in a hushed tone, handing over a clipboard. The papers were stamped with red priority marks, indicating the severity of the patient's conditions. 3 separate patients came in overnight, all claiming accidental injuries. Their bruises and lacerations are consistent with an assault rather than a fall. Anna flipped through the files, feeling a surge of anger well up in her chest. "It's getting worse," she murmured, her voice shaking slightly. She recalled the painful scene from the night before. Nightmare and Tempest nearly coming to blows in the ICU hallway. If the Iron Vultures were turning on each other, there would be casualties. And those casualties would likely end up right here in the trauma ward, straining a staff already on edge. Dr. Cross nodded gravely, her eyes reflecting the same concern Anna felt. Exactly. Some of the staff are terrified to speak up. I've already had 2 nurses call in sick today, and a third one wants to transfer departments. The board is in chaos. Lisa Serrano is trying to distance herself, but you can tell she's still entangled with them somehow. The rest of the members are either clueless or too scared to act decisively. Just then, Brandon Wilson appeared at the edge of the station, holding a sheaf of printed documents. He wore a neutral expression, but Anna recognized the tension in his shoulders. "We need to talk," he said quietly, giving her a barely perceptible nod. Turning to Dr. Cross, he added, "This concerns hospital security." Dr. Cross looked between them. "Take the consultation room down the hall," she whispered, "and hurry. The last thing we need is more suspicion." Anna led Brandon to the small, windowless room meant for patient consultations. Once inside, Brandon locked the door behind them. He placed the documents on a counter. "I've been mapping out their visits," he began, pointing to a rough chart he'd drawn of the hospital's layout. "Every day, around certain times, groups of Iron Vultures show up in specific wings, primarily near administrative offices, the pharmacy, and the trauma ward." Anna stared at the chart. Color-coded lines indicated the bikers' suspected routes. "This is too organized for just random intimidation," she observed, running her finger along a highlighted path that led from the pharmacy to the administrative wing. "They're moving supplies, possibly drugs, or maybe pilfering hospital resources to fuel their own black market needs." Brandon nodded. "It matches what we suspected. They're not here just to bully. There's a business model behind all of this. Nightmare seems to want everything streamlined, low visibility, higher profits. Tempest, on the other hand, believes in brute force, and that conflict might be our chance to bring them down. But we need solid evidence." Before Anna could reply, someone rattled the doorknob. Her heart leapt. Brandon quickly gathered his papers and stood, body tense. A moment later, a muffled voice called out, "Sorry, I need this room. Urgent patient consult." Recognizing a co-worker's voice, Anna exhaled in relief. Still, the interruption was a stark reminder of how careful they had to be. One slip and they could lose the element of surprise. "Meet me after your shift," Brandon murmured. "We'll figure out our next move." As they exited, Anna glanced at the clock on the wall, already counting the hours until they could finalize their plan. The hospital, once a sanctuary for healing, felt more like a battleground with each passing moment. Despite the anxiety coiling within her, Anna refused to buckle. If the Iron Vultures thought they owned this place, they were sorely mistaken. That afternoon, a wave of uneasy calm settled over Metropolitan Hope. The hallways bustled with the usual patient traffic, elderly individuals shuffling in for checkups, worried parents leading children by the hand, and staff members hurrying between labs. Yet underneath this veneer of normalcy was an undercurrent of dread, like a tension headache that refused to subside. Anna went through her rounds with methodical care, but she couldn't ignore the quick glances nurses exchanged, or how the security guards seemed more alert than usual. As the hours crept by, she noticed a growing presence of bikers dressed in plain clothes. Without the leather vests, they looked almost ordinary, blending into waiting areas. However, their hardened expressions and practiced postures gave them away. It felt like the Iron Vultures were tightening their net, waiting for something or someone to trigger their next move. Late in the day, just as Anna was about to go on break, a junior nurse named Tessa approached her with wide, frightened eyes. "Anna, I overheard something in the storeroom," Tessa whispered, casting furtive glances around them. "Two of those bikers, Tempest men, were arguing about a shipment they can't locate. One kept blaming Nightmare for withholding supplies." A chill ran down Anna's spine. "Supplies? From the hospital?" she asked, though she suspected the answer. Tessa's wary nod confirmed it. "Please, Tessa, be careful. Don't let them see you eavesdropping," Anna warned, placing a gentle hand on the younger nurse's shoulder. Tessa swallowed, her face pale. "I'm trying, but they've got such a grip on everything now. We can't even take out the trash without passing by one of them." Anna thanked her quietly, then slipped away to find Brandon. She located him near a seldom-used hallway behind the radiology department, where he was talking in low tones to Officer Adams, the uncorrupted local policeman he had mentioned before. Spotting Anna, they paused their conversation. "Did you learn anything new?" Brandon asked. She relayed Tessa's account. Brandon exchanged a significant look with Officer Adams, who grimaced. "This is bigger than we thought," Adams muttered, keeping his voice low. "If they're moving stolen or illicit medical supplies, we might be dealing with federal-level crimes. But the moment we tip our hand, they'll try to hide or destroy the evidence." Anna crossed her arms, feeling the weight of the situation. "So we need more than a tip," she concluded. "We need to catch them in the act. Logbooks, inventory discrepancies, something definitive that ties them to the missing supplies." Officer Adams nodded. "I can't promise my superiors will jump at this, though. The Iron Vultures have a reputation for silencing people who cross them. I'm risking a lot just being here with you two." Brandon extended a firm handshake to Adams. "We appreciate it. Trust me, once we have what we need, we'll make sure it goes to the right place." After Adams left, Anna glanced at her brother. "How much longer can we wait before they escalate?" she murmured. Brandon's jaw tightened. "Not long. Tempest is losing patience, and Nightmare's supporters are pushing for a quieter approach. Tensions like that usually snap under pressure. We can't just stand by when the hospital could become a war zone." A moment later, a sudden commotion erupted from a nearby corridor. Shouts echoed off the tiled walls, followed by the rumble of footsteps. Anna and Brandon exchanged alarmed glances and rushed toward the noise, weaving past startled staff and trembling patients. They arrived just in time to see a cluster of bikers, both Tempest men and those loyal to Nightmare, squaring off in the middle of a hallway. A terrified clerk cowered behind a desk, trying to shield himself from the confrontation. "Where's that shipment?" A man in a torn jean vest snarled at another, who wore a collared shirt but had the Iron Vultures emblem tattooed on his neck. "Don't play games with me, or I swear." "Enough!" barked a third biker, who lunged forward to intervene. But the tension was already at a breaking point. One push led to another, fists began to swing, and pandemonium broke loose. The hallway erupted into chaos as staff members screamed, and a nurse hastily pressed an alarm button on the wall. Brandon threw himself into the fray, skillfully knocking aside a biker who was about to strike a bystander. Anna, heart pounding, tried to usher frightened employees away from the melee. Within minutes, 2 security guards arrived, batons drawn, but it was clear they were outmatched. The bikers kept brawling, curses filling the air like toxic smoke. Finally, a booming voice cut through the clamor. "Stand down!" Everyone froze, turning to see Nightmare himself, flanked by 2 grim-faced allies. Slowly, the brawling Iron Vultures members separated, panting and cursing under their breath. Nightmare's cold eyes swept over the battered scene. A destroyed potted plant, scattered papers. A terrified nurse huddled against the wall. Tempest, nowhere to be seen, had apparently slipped away during the chaos. The impromptu standoff ended as swiftly as it had begun, but the damage was done. Metropolitan Hope, once a haven for those in need, now felt like a powder keg ready to explode. As Anna helped a dazed security guard to his feet, Brandon caught her gaze from across the corridor. They both understood. The conflict had reached a new dangerous level, and any hope of resolving this peacefully was slipping away. By the time order was tentatively restored in the hallway, word of the altercation had spread throughout the hospital. Staff huddled in break rooms, whispering anxiously about the surge of violence that threatened to consume their place of work. Patients who witnessed the fight demanded explanations or attempted to leave early, terrified that they could be caught in the crossfire. On top of it all, the local news had caught wind of the disturbance. A small cluster of reporters began gathering outside the hospital's main entrance, hungry for a headline. Anna Wilson found herself caught in a swirl of conflicting emotions: rage at the bikers for bringing their turf war into a facility meant for healing, fear that the next escalation could cause even greater harm, and a firm resolve to see this ordeal through to the end. She did her best to comfort colleagues, wiping away tears and assuring them she was working on a solution. Yet in private, she felt the press of time, knowing that each day the Iron Vulture's presence grew stronger. Brandon Wilson spent most of the afternoon scanning every corner of the hospital, watching for more signs of conflict. He caught fleeting glimpses of Nightmare in whispered conversations with suit-clad associates, each wearing expressions of grim determination. Meanwhile, Tempest's faction lurked in smaller groups, openly glaring at anyone who got too close. To Brandon, the lines were drawn. Nightmare still tried to maintain a guise of order, while Tempest pushed for outright dominance through fear. Late in the day, Lisa Serrano, visibly shaken, approached Anna as she was finishing up a patient's chart at the nurse's station. "Anna," Lisa whispered, her voice trembling, "I have to talk to you." She glanced around nervously, as though expecting a biker to leap from the shadows. Reluctantly, Anna nodded. "Let's go somewhere private." She guided Lisa to an empty conference room, shutting the door behind them. Lisa paced the length of the small space, hands wringing in agitation. "They're out of control," she blurted finally. "Nightmare promised that if the hospital cooperated, there'd be no bloodshed, no chaos. But Tempest isn't following the arrangement. And the board, some are bribed, others are just too scared to make a move. I never expected it to spiral like this." Anna folded her arms, watching Lisa carefully. Though she sympathized with the fear Lisa was now experiencing, she also remembered how this board member had once advocated appeasement, effectively paving the way for the bikers to gain a foothold. "What do you expect me to do, Lisa?" she asked quietly. "I'm just a nurse trying to protect my patients and my colleagues. I'm not in charge of the hospital's administrative decisions." Lisa's eyes brimmed with desperation. I know, but maybe you can talk to Dr. Alina Cross or some of the more principled board members. We need a united front to push back, to call in the authorities, or maybe even the state government. If we continue to pretend nothing's wrong, the violence will escalate." Anna took a moment to consider. She knew Brandon was already working with Officer Adams, hoping to involve federal law enforcement once they had enough evidence. But the hospital needed a coordinated stance from its leadership to even stand a chance at ousting the Iron Vultures without massive bloodshed. "I'll see what I can do," she said at last, not fully trusting Lisa's sudden change of heart, but sensing genuine fear in her tone. "In the meantime, you have to be honest about everything you've done with the bikers. Every agreement, every payoff. If you hide details, we can't help you." Lisa nodded, biting her lips so hard it nearly drew blood. I'll try," she stammered. "I'm just terrified of the repercussions. Tempest made it clear that anyone who betrays them won't be safe." Anna pressed her lips together. "None of us are truly safe right now. But if we work together, we might change that." With that, Lisa Serrano departed, leaving Anna alone with the weight of new responsibilities pressing down on her shoulders. Stepping back into the hallway, Anna nearly ran into Brandon, who had evidently been searching for her. "I spoke to Lisa," she began, her voice taut. "She's ready to talk, but she's scared." Brandon's expression hardened. "This could be what we need. Someone from inside the board providing details we can cross-reference with the hospital's financials and the stolen supplies. We can't miss this opportunity." They couldn't discuss it further, as the echo of footsteps and lowered voices signaled the approach of yet another biker patrol. With a quick nod, they went their separate ways, Anna to finish her shift, Brandon to continue his covert surveillance. Both were acutely aware that time was running out, and that every additional day allowed the Iron Vultures to tighten their stranglehold. The next steps had to be decisive, or all would be lost. Morning light filtered through the large windows of Metropolitan Hope's main lobby, illuminating an uneasy peace that felt more like the eye of a storm than a genuine return to normal. The hospital staff arrived for their shifts, each one casting wary glances at the security guards, who now stood in pairs, scanning the hall for any sign of bikers. Overnight, a few of Tempest's men had been spotted lurking near the ambulance bay, likely checking for vulnerabilities. Anna Wilson gathered her courage as she made her way to a private meeting called by Dr. Alina Cross. The invitation had been extended to a handful of critical department heads and board members, the ones who had not openly succumbed to the Iron Vulture's intimidation or bribes. Lisa Serrano was expected to attend, though Anna wondered whether the woman's newfound resolve would hold under scrutiny. The group convened in a spacious conference room behind locked doors. Dr. Cross stood at the head of the table, her posture tense, Beside her, Brandon Wilson kept a watchful eye on everyone who entered, as though anticipating an ambush. Once everyone had settled, 8 people in total, Dr. Cross took a deep breath and began. We all know what's happening in this hospital. The Iron Vultures have infiltrated our administration, our wards, and our supply chain. We've had violent altercations, staff threatened, patients terrified. This cannot continue. A murmured agreement swept around the table, but the tension was thick enough to taste. Lisa Serrano looked pale, fiddling nervously with a pen. A male board member with a neat mustache cleared his throat. I still don't see what we can realistically do, he said, a hint of desperation in his voice. We can't confront them physically, and if we call the police, well, you've seen how slow they are to act. Some officers might even be in the gang's pocket. That's why we need federal help, Brandon interjected, his voice calm but firm. I've been in contact with an officer named Adams who's honest, but local forces alone won't cut it. We need to build a case that federal agencies, FBI, DEA, whoever, can't ignore. That means collecting airtight evidence of their illegal operations here. Drugs, fraud, extortion, anything that goes beyond state lines. Anna picked up where Brandon left off. I've been collecting patient records and suspicious admission logs. Some of my colleagues are doing the same. We have a small repository of documents showing patterns of injuries consistent with assault, plus discrepancies in medication inventories. But it's still circumstantial. We need more. Lisa Serrano swallowed hard. I can provide financial records showing abnormal transactions tied to certain hospital accounts. Some might connect to Nightmare or his corporate front. I'm terrified Tempest will find out I shared them. Dr. Cross offered Lisa a reassuring nod. We'll protect you as best we can, but you have to be thorough. This is our one chance. The neat-mustached board member shifted uneasily. If you fail, the bikers will retaliate, and they'll know exactly who tried to bring them down. Brandon's gaze was steely. If we do nothing, they'll consume the hospital entirely. You've seen how Tempest's men are spoiling for a fight. It's only a matter of time before the violence escalates further. Maybe even hostages, or worse. Silence gripped the room, each individual grappling with the gravity of the situation. Dr. Cross drew a deep breath and faced them. Then it's decided. We compile the data, financial records, medical logs, security footage if we can get it, and we get it to the right people. Meanwhile, we have to maintain normal hospital operations without tipping off the Iron Vultures that we're onto them. Lisa nodded, dabbing sweat from her brow. She looked at Anna, a silent plea in her eyes. Anna mustered a small, reassuring smile. We'll do this together, the nurse whispered. The meeting ended with a mixture of relief and dread. Everyone understood the high stakes. A single misstep, and they risked retribution from a dangerous gang. Yet hope flickered in the corners of the room, fueled by the sense of unity that had formed among these hospital employees who refused to bow to criminal intimidation. Anna felt it too, a cautious optimism that maybe, just maybe, they could save Metropolitan Hope Hospital from spiraling into ruin. Night fell like a shroud over Riverside, and within the hospital's subdued glow, tensions continued to simmer. The Iron Vultures had not made any overtly violent moves since the midday brawl, but their presence was more pervasive than ever. Bikers in civilian clothes wandered through the wards, occasionally peering into supply rooms or trailing behind hospital staff. To Anna, it felt like she was constantly being watched, her every movement assessed by unfriendly eyes. Brandon spent the evening making discreet rounds of his own, checking in with nurses and clerks who had agreed to help document suspicious activity. He also secured the data Anna had collected, storing digital copies on an encrypted drive and physical documents in a locked cabinet. More than once, he had to slip away when he spotted a biker turning the corner. Stealth had become second nature to him after his years in special forces. But the stakes here felt more personal. Around midnight, a call crackled over the hospital's PA system. Dr. Alina Cross, report to ER. Dr. Cross to ER, stat. Anna, who was in the midst of adjusting an IV drip, felt her heart lurch. Urgent pages at this hour often indicated severe trauma cases, and she wondered if it might be related to the Iron Vultures again. Her intuition proved correct. In the ER, she found Dr. Cross and a team of medics treating a biker who had been stabbed multiple times. Blood pooled beneath the gurney, and the metallic scent saturated the air. Two other bikers stood by, faces masked with fury and fear. As Anna stepped up to assist, she recognized one of them as Blade, a close associate of Tempest, known for his hot-headed nature. "Move faster," Blade barked at the nurses, voice trembling with adrenaline. "He's one of ours. He needs a doctor right now." Dr. Cross shot him a searing look. "We're doing everything we can, but you have to back off so we can work." Anna slipped on gloves, helping to stabilize the wounded man's vitals. She noted his ashen skin and ragged breathing, signs of acute blood loss. With methodical expertise, Dr. Cross inserted a chest tube to relieve internal pressure, while Anna and another nurse set up IV lines for fluid transfusions. Despite the tension, their medical training kicked into high gear. While they worked, Blade hovered menacingly. "This was one of Tempest's guys," he growled under his breath, his voice barely audible over the beeping monitors. "He got jumped outside a bar, one of Nightmare's crew maybe, or some rival gang. Doesn't matter. Somebody's gonna pay." Anna felt a chill hearing the implication that yet another Iron Vulture's turf battle was spilling onto the hospital's doorstep. The man's condition was critical. She could tell from his vitals that he might not make it. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she and Dr. Cross labored to keep him stable. After an agonizing 30 minutes, the team managed to get the wounded biker ready for emergency surgery. The last thing Anna saw before the OR doors closed was Blade's furious stare boring into her. Exhausted, Anna peeled off her gloves and mask, stepping away to wash her hands. Behind her, Dr. Cross exhaled shakily. "This is what we've become, a battlefield hospital. And it's only getting worse." Her voice held a mix of despair and defiance. Anna met her eyes in the harsh fluorescent light. "We'll keep going," she said softly. "It's what we do. Save lives, no matter whose they are. But you're right, this can't continue." Dr. Cross nodded, removing her surgical cap. "Stay alert, Anna. If that man doesn't pull through, Tempest's faction might retaliate." She didn't need to elaborate. Anna understood. The line between medical service and mortal danger had blurred alarmingly. As Anna left the ER for a moment's respite, she spotted Brandon down the corridor, his face grim. He'd likely witnessed the frantic rush to save the biker. Wordlessly, he inclined his head, acknowledging the reality they were all trapped in. Every skirmish or territorial dispute the Iron Vultures engaged in would end up right here, threatening staff and patients alike. In that silent exchange, Anna and Brandon reaffirmed their pact. They would see this through to the end, because if they didn't, Metropolitan Hope Hospital would cease to be a place of healing altogether, devoured by the Iron Vulture's endless cycle of violence and fear. The next 2 days were marked by an uneasy lull. The Iron Vultures still prowled the corridors, but overt clashes quieted. Some staff members dared to hope that maybe the worst had passed. Yet Anna Wilson suspected that the silence was a precursor to something far more explosive. Judging by the grim lines etched into Brandon's face whenever they spoke in hushed corners, he suspected it too. The hospital's upper management, spearheaded by Lisa Serrano's newly hardened resolve, began discreetly funneling incriminating documents to Brandon. These files detailed suspicious financial transactions, unexplained budgetary holes, and sudden surges in inventory orders for medications with high street value. Each piece of evidence added a layer to the growing case against the Iron Vultures. Anna believed that once the right federal agency saw these documents, they would have no choice but to intervene in force. Late one afternoon, while Anna was checking on a patient in the recovery wing, she heard raised voices in the adjoining hallway. She tensed, bracing for another outbreak of violence. Peering through the cracked door, she saw Dr. Alina Cross talking in hushed yet urgent tones with two men in dark suits who bore no visible biker insignia. They exuded a corporate air, precisely the type of individuals Anna associated with Nightmare's white-collar facade. Dr. Cross gestured animatedly, her expression intense. The men replied in curt, clipped phrases, occasionally glancing around to ensure no one overheard. Though Anna couldn't make out every word, phrases like medication records, insurance claims, and, keeping everything clean, reached her ears, fueling her suspicions. After a terse exchange, the men strode off, leaving Dr. Cross standing alone, looking frustrated and somewhat shaken. Later, when Dr. Cross stopped by the nurse's station, Anna seized the chance to inquire. "Those two men, you seemed upset. Who are they?" Dr. Cross sighed heavily, glancing over her shoulder as if to confirm they were truly alone. "Associates of Nightmare," she explained softly. "They're trying to maintain the facade that the Iron Vultures are merely concerned citizens investing in hospital infrastructure. They had the nerve to suggest we alter certain records to avoid any red flags with government oversight. I told them no, in not-so-polite terms." A mixture of admiration and worry coursed through Anna. "I'm glad you stood your ground, but that might make you a target." Dr. Cross gave a wry smile. "Perhaps, but we're all targets now, aren't we? How much worse can it get?" Her voice held a determined edge. "I refuse to be complicit in their crimes." Anna wanted to say more, but the station phone rang, demanding Dr. Cross's attention. As she walked away, Anna noted the fatigue in the older woman's stride, a weariness that mirrored her own. The entire staff seemed close to unraveling, held together only by the desperate hope that they could still save their hospital. That evening, Brandon pulled Anna aside. "We're close," he informed her, holding up a USB drive. "I've compiled everything: financial logs from Lisa, your patient injury records, internal memos regarding suspicious inventory usage. If all goes well, Officer Adams has a contact at the regional FBI office. We'll deliver this to them tonight." Anna felt a surge of relief and dread in equal measure. That's good news, but what happens when the Iron Vultures realize we've gone to the feds? Brandon's eyes darkened. "They won't take it lying down. We have to expect retaliation. The question is, can we get law enforcement here in force before the bikers unleash havoc?" She swallowed hard. "Let's hope so. I'll keep watch over Dr. Cross and Lisa Serrano. If the Iron Vultures suspect them, they'll strike fast." They parted ways, each stepping back into the hospital's humming flow of activity. Anna resumed her duties, though her mind lingered on the precarious timeline. Once federal authorities were involved, there could be raids, arrests, maybe even an armed standoff. And in that scenario, the hospital would be ground zero for the Iron Vulture's desperation. In a sense, it was already a battlefield, with each quiet corridor holding potential danger. Anna found herself glancing over her shoulder more than usual, worried that Tempest or Blade might appear, brandishing accusations of betrayal. Yet a glimmer of hope sustained her, the knowledge that help might soon be on the way, that perhaps this final gamble with the FBI would break the bikers' hold. Until then, she would follow the oath she swore as a nurse, to protect life, even in the face of violence. Night fell again, wrapping Riverside in shadows and flickers of streetlight. In the hospital's administrative wing, Brandon quietly made his way to a side entrance where Officer Adams awaited with a key to a secure off-site server. Brandon handed over the USB drive containing the trove of evidence. Officer Adams promised to deliver it to his FBI contact within the hour. The plan was set into motion. Yet as the minutes dragged on, Anna found it impossible to relax. She paced through the trauma ward, glancing at the clock every few seconds. Dr. Cross, noticing her anxiety, gave her a gentle pat on the shoulder. "We've done all we can," the doctor said softly, as if reading Anna's thoughts. "Now we wait." They didn't have to wait long. Within an hour, the hospital's overhead lights flickered, a momentary power fluctuation that made the monitors in the ER and ICU blink ominously. The backup generators kicked in quickly, but the mood took a nosedive. The staff sensed something was off. Whispers circulated about someone cutting the main line, though no official announcement was made. Then came the rumble of motorcycles outside. A security guard ran in, breathless, explaining that a large group of Iron Vultures had surrounded the ambulance bay. He spotted Tempest himself shouting orders, flanked by Blade and other enforcers. All staff members were urged to remain inside, lock down their stations, and avoid confrontation. Anna's heart hammered as she realized this was likely the gang's retaliation. Somehow, Tempest must have learned, or at least suspected, that the hospital was moving against them. She hurried to find Brandon, weaving through anxious nurses and wide-eyed residents. She found him in a dimly lit corridor near the elevators, talking to Dr. Cross, Lisa Serrano, and a couple of security guards. "They're swarming the bay," Brandon said grimly, meeting Anna's gaze. "Tempest might be planning to storm the hospital, or at least take hostages. We can't let that happen." Lisa Serrano looked pale but resolute. "What do we do? The police can't get here fast enough, not unless they realize how bad this is." Anna turned to Brandon. "The FBI contact. Could they intervene quicker?" Brandon grimaced. "They might already be mobilizing, but these things take time. The Iron Vultures won't wait." Suddenly, the corridor lights flickered once more, then returned to their usual glare. One of the security guards motioned for everyone to move into a safer area. "We should regroup in the main lobby. It's more defensible than these narrow hallways." Despite the tension, they quickly mobilized. Anna and Dr. Cross took charge of evacuating patients from the immediate threat zones, particularly the ER and ICU areas that had exterior entrances. Lisa Serrano grabbed a hospital intercom microphone, instructing all wards to follow emergency lockdown protocols. Brandon and the security guards spread out, trying to secure key corridors and ensure no bikers had already infiltrated inside. Near the ambulance bay, through a set of double doors with glass panes, Anna could see Tempest and about a dozen bikers. Their postures were tense like coiled springs. Tempest pointed at the building, his mouth moving in angry shouts. The roar of motorcycles reverberated, a wall of sound that made the glass tremble. Before she could process the danger fully, the main entrance doors were forced open. A smaller group of Iron Vultures pushed inside, brandishing makeshift weapons, chains, bats, crowbars. Hospital security tried to hold them back, but the bikers easily overpowered the first guard, knocking him to the ground. A nurse screamed, diving behind a reception desk. Brandon rushed toward the commotion, his face set in fierce determination. He tackled one of the bikers mid-lunge, disarming him of a crowbar with a swift, practiced maneuver. Another security guard joined the fray, attempting to wrestle a second biker to the floor. Dr. Cross hurried patients away from the looming fight, trying to keep them calm and out of harm's reach. For Anna, time seemed to slow down. She caught a glimpse of Lisa Serrano huddling against a wall, arms wrapped around her knees. She saw the contorted expression of a biker swinging a chain at Brandon, only to miss as Brandon ducked low. She felt her own heart pounding in her ears, hands shaking. Yet she refused to freeze. She ushered terrified patients down a side corridor, guiding them toward a waiting area with heavier doors. Gunshots suddenly echoed from outside, probably local police or Iron Vultures exchanging warning fire. Anna's stomach lurched, imagining the carnage that could unfold if bullets started flying inside. She could only pray that federal backup was on its way. In the midst of the chaos, Brandon managed to subdue another biker, pinning him to the ground with a knee to the back. More security guards rushed in, batons raised, forming a small defensive line. Anna heard Tempest bellow from just beyond the doors. "You think you can sell us out? We own this hospital." But as the hospital's lights flickered yet again, Anna glimpsed a sudden flash of red and blue through the main entrance's glass. Police cruisers, possibly more than that. In the swirling confusion, one thought crystallized in her mind. Help was finally here, but the Iron Vultures had kicked down the gates. The storm had truly begun. Screams, shouts, and the pounding of running feet collided in a cacophony that enveloped Metropolitan Hope Hospital. The Iron Vultures had breached the lobby, dividing into smaller packs, some charging deeper into the building, while others clashed with hospital security near the doors. Outside, the piercing wail of sirens and the glare of flashing lights hinted at the arrival of law enforcement. Anna Wilson's breath came in ragged bursts as she darted from hallway to hallway, desperately trying to steer patients to safety. In one corridor, she encountered two bikers attempting to kick in the door of a locked room. Inside, a group of nurses huddled with half a dozen patients. Summoning her courage, Anna grabbed a metal IV pole and banged it against the wall, startling the men enough for them to spin around. She knew she stood little chance in a fight, but she also knew she needed to distract them long enough for help to arrive. "Back off!" she shouted, voice shaking but resolute. Her heart hammered so loudly she thought it might burst. For a tense moment, The bikers just stared, as if disbelieving that a mere nurse would challenge them. Then one of them took a step toward her, brandishing a short baton. Anna swallowed hard, refusing to retreat. Just then, Brandon appeared at the corridor's other end, sprinting at full tilt. He tackled the closer biker, slamming him hard against the opposite wall. The second man tried to swing his baton at Brandon, but Anna lunged forward, jabbing him in the side with the IV pole. It wasn't the most graceful move, but it momentarily distracted him, allowing Brandon to land a swift, disabling strike. Panting, Anna helped her brother secure the unconscious bikers. "Thank you," she breathed, voice quivering. Brandon nodded, his eyes scanning the hall. Gunfire rattled from the main lobby, followed by authoritative commands on a bullhorn. She guessed the police, and hopefully federal agents, were now making a determined push inside. They hurried past the subdued bikers, flinging open the locked door to shepherd the nurses and patients to a safer wing. Many were sobbing, and Anna did her best to comfort them, though her own nerves felt frayed to their limits. Dr. Alina Cross soon joined them, hair disheveled, an expression of battle-worn resolve on her face. "We've got a partial evacuation plan in motion," she gasped, wiping sweat from her brow. Some of the staff managed to lead ambulatory patients out through the west exit before the bikers closed in. Outside the windows, red and blue lights danced across the walls. Anna glimpsed heavily armored vehicles rolling up to the hospital's entrance. SWAT teams, perhaps, or federal agents. A surge of hope bolstered her. If they could contain the Iron Vultures quickly, maybe the casualties would be minimal. Suddenly, an explosion of noise reverberated through the corridors. Flashbang grenades. Anna recognized the deafening pop and blinding flash from training videos. Screams echoed as the bikers, unprepared for such a tactic, scattered in disarray. Law enforcement officers in tactical gear swept through the main halls, systematically detaining any biker they encountered. The chaos, though intense, was at least organized on the police side. Tempest's voice rang out above the din. "Fall back! Fall back!" He sounded both enraged and desperate, aware that his attempt at a hostile takeover was crumbling under overwhelming pressure. Anna caught sight of him sprinting for a side exit, a wild, furious look on his face. Brandon took off after him, but a locked security gate barred his pursuit, and Tempest vanished into the swirling melee. Meanwhile, groups of officers pounced on the remaining bikers, pinning them to the ground with brutal efficiency. At last, a uniformed policeman recognized Anna and quickly escorted her toward a makeshift triage area set up in the cafeteria, now free of bikers. She blinked in astonishment at the wave of officers, some local, some wearing federal badges, pouring in. It was a sight both terrifying and heartening. Within an hour, the roar of engines subsided, replaced by the hum of ambulance sirens for the wounded and the static-laden chatter of police radios. Nightmare was nowhere to be seen, possibly having slipped out under the chaos. But a significant portion of the Iron Vultures, those too slow or too brash, lay in handcuffs, awaiting transport to the station for booking. Hospital staff emerged from hiding, embracing each other in relief, though fear and shock still clung to every face. Dr. Cross addressed Anna with trembling gratitude. "We did it. You, Brandon, Lisa Serrano, everyone who helped gather evidence. The authorities had what they needed, and they responded in force." Anna gazed around the cafeteria, seeing nurses consoling each other, doctors tending to minor injuries, and law enforcement officers taking statements from dazed witnesses. Tears blurred her vision. It wasn't a complete victory. Tempest had escaped, Nightmare was still at large, and many injuries would haunt them. Yet the worst of the Iron Vulture's stranglehold on Metropolitan Hope Hospital was broken. Brandon joined her side, sweaty and breathing hard, but uninjured. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" She nodded, tears slipping free. "I think so. It's over. At least for now." He pulled her into a protective hug, and for a moment, Anna allowed the tension of the past weeks to drain from her shaking body. She glanced at the battered halls of the hospital, the lingering haze from flashbangs, the scattered evidence of a struggle. In time, these wounds would heal, some quickly, others leaving scars. But one truth was certain. The Iron Vultures had learned a hard lesson about underestimating a dedicated nurse and her ex-Special Forces brother. No matter how formidable they believed themselves to be, they could not stand against courage, unity, and justice, especially in a place founded on saving lives. As dawn's light began to color the windows, Anna gently broke away from Brandon's embrace and squared her shoulders. There would be statements to give, reports to file, and patience to comfort. Yet despite the grim aftermath, hope shimmered in the battered corridors of Metropolitan Hope. And for Anna Wilson, that faint glimmer of hope was enough to face whatever came next. From a personal standpoint, watching Anna and Brandon fight back against corruption shows how unity and determination can overcome even the darkest odds. By standing together, hospital staff, honest officials, and everyday heroes, they proved that compassion and justice still shine through in times of turmoil. Yes, the conflict left its scars, shattered windows, terrified patients, and lingering fears. But it also sparked incredible bravery and new beginnings at Metropolitan Hope Hospital. In the end, the Iron Vulture's downfall stands as a testament to what ordinary people can accomplish when they unite with a common purpose. Have your own thoughts or experiences with overcoming obstacles? Drop a comment below to share your perspective. Let's keep the conversation going and inspire each other to stand strong in the face of adversity.